ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਵਰਲਡ ਨਿਊਜ਼ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਨਾਮ ਰਮਨ ਬਾਜਵਾ। ਖਬਰਾਂ ਦਾ ਆਗਾਜ਼ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਪਰ ਇੱਕ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਹੁਣ ਤੱਕ ਦੀਆਂ ਹੈਡਲਾਈਨਸ ਤੇ। ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੀ ਵਿਧਾਨ ਸਭਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਚਨਾ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੇ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਭਾਸ਼ਣ। ਸੁਨਕ ਨੇ COP 27 ਲਈ ਲਿਆ ਨਵਾਂ ਫੈਸਲਾ, ਜਲਵਾਯੂ ਸੰਮੇਲਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਵੇਗਾ ਸ਼ਾਮਿਲ ਬ੍ਰਿਟੇਨ। ਐਨਡੀਪੀ ਲੀਡਰ ਜਗਮੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਪਾਰਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਹਿੱਲ ਤੇ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ। ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਵਿਵਾਦਗ੍ਰਸਤ ਬਿੱਲ। ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਨੇ ਦੇਸ਼ ਵਿੱਚ ਦਾਖਲ ਹੋਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਪ੍ਰਵਾਸੀਆਂ ਦੀ ਸੰਖਿਆ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਾਧੇ ਲਈ ਯੋਜਨਾਵਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਐਲਾਨ। ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਖਬਰਾਂ ਵਿਸਥਾਰ ਨਾਲ। ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਕੋਲੰਬੀਆ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਸਲਵਾਦ ਵਿਰੋਧੀ ਪਹਿਲਕਦਮੀਆਂ ਲਈ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਮੂਲ ਦੀ ਸੰਸਦੀ ਸਕੱਤਰ ਰਚਨਾ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੇ ਮੰਗਲਵਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੀ ਮਾਤ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਦਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਸੰਖੇਪ ਭਾਸ਼ਣ ਦਿੱਤਾ। ਵਿਧਾਨ ਸਭਾ ਦੇ ਸੈਸ਼ਨ ਦੌਰਾਨ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਭਾਸ਼ਣ ਦੇ ਕੇ ਉਸਨੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਨਾਮ ਇਤਿਹਾਸ ਦੇ ਸੁਨਹਿਰੀ ਪੰਨਿਆਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਦਰਜ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈ। ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਕੋਲੰਬੀਆ ਵਿਧਾਨ ਸਭਾ ਦੇ ਇਤਿਹਾਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਵਾਰ ਹੈ ਜਦੋਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਵਿਧਾਇਕ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਹੋਏ। ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਭਾਸ਼ਣ ਖਤਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਤਾਂ ਵਿਧਾਇਕਾਂ ਨੇ ਤਾੜੀਆਂ ਵਜਾ ਕੇ ਰਚਨਾ ਸਿੰਘ ਦਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕੀਤਾ। ਜਗਰਾਉਂ ਨੇੜਲੇ ਪਿੰਡ ਭੰਮੀਪੁਰਾ ਦੇ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਰਗਵੀਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਜਣਾ ਦੀ ਧੀ ਰਚਨਾ ਸਿੰਘ 9 ਮਈ 2017 ਨੂੰ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਵਾਰ ਵਿਧਾਇਕਾ ਚੁਣੇ ਗਏ ਸਨ ਤੇ 26 ਨਵੰਬਰ 2020 ਨੂੰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਨਸਲਵਾਦ ਵਿਰੋਧੀ ਮਾਮਲਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਸੰਸਦੀ ਸਕੱਤਰ ਬਣਾਇਆ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ। ਬ੍ਰਿਟੇਨ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਧਾਨ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਰਿਸ਼ੀ ਸੁਨਕ ਨੇ ਐਲਾਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਮਿਸਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਗਲੇ ਹਫ਼ਤੇ ਹੋਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਜਲਵਾਯੂ ਸੰਮੇਲਨ COP 27 ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਾਮਿਲ ਹੋਣਗੇ। ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਬ੍ਰਿਟੇਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਰਥਿਕ ਸੰਕਟ ਅਤੇ ਹੋਰ ਘਰੇਲੂ ਮੁੱਦਿਆਂ ਤੇ ਧਿਆਨ ਕੇਂਦਰਿਤ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਸ਼ਰਮ ਅਲ ਸ਼ੇਖ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਣ ਵਾਲੀ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਾਮਿਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣਗੇ। ਜਲਵਾਯੂ ਕਾਰਕੁਨਾਂ ਅਤੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਦੇ ਅੰਦਰੋਂ ਆਲੋਚਨਾ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਰਿਸ਼ੀ ਸੁਨਕ ਨੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਫੈਸਲਾ ਵਾਪਸ ਲੈ ਲਿਆ। ਰਿਸ਼ੀ ਸੁਨਕ ਨੇ ਟਵੀਟ ਕਰਕੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਫੈਸਲੇ ਦੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈ। ਐਨਡੀਪੀ ਲੀਡਰ ਜਗਮੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਪਾਰਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਹਿੱਲ ਤੇ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਜਗਮੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਪਰਿਵਾਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਰਹਿਣ ਸਹਿਣ ਦੀਆਂ ਵੱਧਦੀਆਂ ਲਾਗਤਾਂ ਅਤੇ ਵੱਧ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਵਿਆਜ ਦਰਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਸਿੱਝਣ ਵਿੱਚ ਮਦਦ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਉਪਾਵਾਂ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਚਰਚਾ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਅਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਜਗਮੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਦੁਆਰਾ ਸਿੱਖਿਆ ਕਰਮਚਾਰੀਆਂ ਲਈ ਆਪਣੇ ਬੈਕ ਟੂ ਕਮ ਕਾਨੂੰਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੈਰ ਹਾਜ਼ਰਦਾਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਕਰਨ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਟਿੱਪਣੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ।
We're seeing more and more the impacts of the cost of living crisis. So I want to talk about some of the things that we expect the government to address, or some of the concerns we want to see this government address in the fall economic statement. A recent report has made it clear that Canadians are at a record level of household debt, and particularly at a record level of credit card debt, which is, of course, the highest interest debt. So this is a real concern. Canadians are feeling squeezed, and they're using their credit cards to pay for the things they need. And we know that. We know that from the stories that we've heard, that with the cost of living going up, the cost of everything getting higher and higher, Canadians are resorting to their credit cards. So this is a very difficult time, very tough time for a lot of Canadians. And so what we want to see in the fall economic statement is that the government is responding to the needs of Canadians who are feeling squeezed. And we'll lay out some of what we would do if we were in power. We would immediately acknowledge the massive profits that the corporate sector is enjoying, particularly oil and gas, and point to countries around the world that have taken a response to this and said, with the record profits that the oil and gas sector is making, we need to do something. And countries like the UK, unions like the European Union and Spain have all put in place a windfall tax on the massive profits of the oil and gas sector. In fact, the Biden administration has recently referred to their profits as war profiteering. And frankly, it is. The oil and gas prices are up because of a war, and these wealthy CEOs and corporations are profiteering off the backs of Canadians. And so something has to be done. This government has failed to take any steps to respond to the profiteering that's going on. And the windfall tax is one way where we can make some real concrete steps towards helping Canadians out. In fact, the CEO of Shell himself has said that energy companies are making huge profits. They should be taxed by government, and that should be used to help Canadians out or help people out with the cost of energy. And we agree. We think that's absolutely something we need to do. It's odd that I'm agreeing with the CEO of Shell, but in this case, that's exactly what the government should do. We also want to see this government end the loopholes. It's a cost of $30 billion annually, and this was reported on recently, that with the loopholes in our tax system, CEOs and large corporations are not paying what they owe. And by not paying what they owe, Canadians are losing out $30 billion a year simply because of loopholes that continue to allow this money to be lost. This is a expenditure, this is an expense, and it needs to be ended so we can invest back in Canadians. And what we would do is, with a real risk of a recession, we need an EI system that works. So we need to make sure the EI system is reformed so that if Canadians lose their jobs, the EI is there for them. We also want to see some relief for the cold and long winter coming up, and we want to see GST off of home heating. That's going to help Canadians with the cost of their energy over the summer or over the winter, and it's going to help immediately.
ਵਿਰੋਧੀ ਧਿਰ ਦੇ ਨੇਤਾ ਪੀਅਰ ਪੋਲੀਏਵਰ ਨੇ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਤੇ ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨਾ ਸਾਧਿਆ ਕਿ ਮਜ਼ਦੂਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਅਧਿਕਾਰਾਂ ਤੇ ਹਮਲਾ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਪ੍ਰਧਾਨ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਜਸਟਿਨ ਟਰੂਡੋ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਧ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਮਹਿੰਗਾਈ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੀਤੀ। ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਟਰੂਡੋ ਮਜ਼ਦੂਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਤਨਖਾਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਖਾ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਨੇ, ਜਿਸ ਤੇ ਟਰੂਡੋ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਜਵਾਬ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਤੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਗਿਆ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨਸ ਦੀ ਹਰ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਮਦਦ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ। ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਟਰੂਡੋ ਨੇ ਪੋਲੀਏਵਰ ਨੂੰ ਸਵਾਲ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਕਿ ਉਹ ontario ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇਸ ਧਾਰਾ ਦੀ ਵਰਤੋਂ ਦੀ ਨਿੰਦਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ।
Well, it kind of reminds me, he's carbon tax paying higher taxes will make people better off. Well, we found out from the parliamentary budget officer that wasn't true. And then he said that he would take on all the debt so that Canadians wouldn't have to. Remember that? Well, not only are they stuck with a higher national debt with more interest payments, but now their personal debts are going up. According to Equifax, the average Canadian household has more credit card debt than at any time in Canadian history, and the Prime Minister's inflationary policies are driving up interest rates on those costs. So if he really took on all that debt so that Canadians wouldn't have to, who's going to pay those Canadians' credit card bills?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. The opposition were truly concerned about the cost of living for Canadians, he would be supporting our measure to support families with the cost of dental care for their kids. They'd help with our support on low-income renters as well. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm also astonished to hear that the Leader of the Opposition has been silent on the matter of the use of the notwithstanding clause preemptively to suspend people's fundamental rights and freedoms. I call on the Leader of the Opposition to stand up for workers' rights, to defend people's rights and freedoms, and condemn the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause to suspend workers' rights.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. No one has done more to attack workers' rights than the Prime Minister, who eats up their paychecks with 40-year highs in inflation. To $54 million for the Arrive scam app, an app we didn't need, that didn't work, that sent 10,000 people wrongly into quarantine, and that could have been designed for $250,000 in a weekend, but took $54 million instead. Some of the companies the Prime Minister said got the money said they never received it. It's time for the truth. Will the Prime Minister support our motion to call in the auditors?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I know we're all astonished to hear the Leader of the Opposition miss an opportunity to stand up for the rights and freedoms of workers. That is something that we expect him to continue to do alongside all of us in the House in condemning the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause. But on top of that, he's also talking about cuts to EI. When he criticizes us for being there and ensuring that EI and CPP is there for workers into the future, he calls that tax increases. We're going to be there to support people paying EI. We're going to be there to support people with their pensions. We're going to be there for dental and rental. He is not.
ओंटारियो सरकार वर्करां उपर इकरारनामा लगाउण वाला अपना विवादग्रस्त बिल लैके आ रही है जो सूबे नूं अजिही शक्ति दिंदी है जिस खिलाफ लड़िया नहीं जा सकदा। इस ते ओंटारियो दे प्रीमियर डग फोर्ड ने साफ कर दिता है कि वो इस तो पिछे नहीं हटणगे। ਇਹ बिल ओंटारियो सिक्ख्या कर्मचारियों ते इकरारनामा नूं लागू करेगा। प्रीमियर डग फोर्ड ने यूनियन लीडरशिप ते सीधा निशाना बनाते हुए पहली बार इस मुद्दे ते अपनी चुप्पी तोड़ी है ते विधान सभा विच कहा है कि पीसी पार्टी ही एक पार्टी है जो मापियां ते विद्यार्थियों लई खड़ी है।
Yesterday, the Minister of Education said he was tabling Bill 28 because it was in the best interest of students. Let me say, Mr. Speaker, that's pretty rich, coming from a government that has shown time and time again how little they actually care for our kids and our students. They've underfunded our schools. They've increased class sizes. They forced kids into online classes. And they kept kids out of classrooms longer than any other jurisdiction. Speaker, that is not the behavior of a government that cares about kids, and neither is Bill 28. Order. Will the Premier stop this, roll up his sleeves, and work with education workers to invest in our students?
To reply, members of please take their seats. And to reply, the Premier.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we're making sure that the students stay in class. I'm going to repeat that. They're going to stay in class. We want parents to know that we're doing everything we can to make sure students don't miss one single day in class. We've been at the table and we put a very fair offer, and the union continues to charge ahead with a strike action that would affect this province this Friday. That means there'd be 2 million students sitting at home. Probably 1 million parents would be taking work off, Mr. Speaker. I want to be clear. We will never, ever waver from our position that students remain in the class, catching up with their learning, surrounded by friends with a full school experience, including extracurricular activities.
Speaker, well, it's good to hear the Premier finally get allowed to speak by his government there. I got to tell you, Friday, kids are going to be out of school in many parts of this province because your government is going to disrupt that.
Order.
Ontarians want to know why this Premier is not standing up for the custodians and the maintenance workers who are keeping our schools clean and safe, or the educational assistants supporting our students with special needs, or the ECEs that are teaching our littlest kids. Speaker, this government, they have all the power and the privilege. All these workers have is their union and their right to bargain collectively. It is not too late. Fix the mess you're making today.
Order.
Will the Premier speak up and stop this bill?
Inviting the members to make their comments to the chair. The Premier.
Mr. Speaker, there's only one party in this chamber that is standing up for students and parents, and that's the PC party. The Liberals, Mr. Speaker, the Liberals and NDP, they want to make sure they stand up for the heads of the union. Mr. Speaker, our party differentiates between Labour and Labour leadership. We support the frontline Labour folks. Mr. Speaker, we support the fact that the frontline folks get 131 days. We're okay with that, of sick days.
ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਭਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ BC ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਆਮ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਲਈ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਦੀ ਘਾਟ ਇੱਕ ਗੰਭੀਰ ਸਮੱਸਿਆ ਬਣਦੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ BC ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ ਹੈਲਥ ਕੇਅਰ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਦੇ ਮੌਜੂਦਾ ਸੰਕਟ ਨਾਲ ਨਜਿੱਠਣ ਦੇ ਯਤਨਾਂ ਵਜੋਂ BC ਦੇ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਡਾਕਟਰਾਂ ਲਈ ਨਵੇਂ ਪੇਮੈਂਟ ਮਾਡਲ ਦਾ ਐਲਾਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਨਵੇਂ ਮਾਡਲ ਤਹਿਤ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਡਾਕਟਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਣ ਵਾਲੀ ਪੇਮੈਂਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਮਹੱਤਵਪੂਰਨ ਵਾਧਾ ਹੋਏਗਾ ਅਤੇ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਮੁਤਾਬਿਕ ਇਹ ਨਾ ਸਿਰਫ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਡਾਕਟਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣਾ ਕਿੱਤਾ ਤਬਦੀਲੀ ਕਰਨ ਤੋਂ ਰੋਕਣ ਵਿੱਚ ਮਦਦਗਾਰ ਸਾਬਿਤ ਹੋਏਗਾ, ਸਗੋਂ ਨਵੇਂ ਡਾਕਟਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਇਸ ਖੇਤਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਉਣ ਲਈ ਉਤਸ਼ਾਹਿਤ ਕਰੇਗਾ। ਡਾਕਟਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਪੇਮੈਂਟ ਸੰਬੰਧੀ ਇਹ ਨਵਾਂ ਮਾਡਲ ਅਗਲੇ ਸਾਲ ਤੋਂ ਲਾਗੂ ਹੋਏਗਾ, ਜਿਸ ਫੈਸਲੇ ਦਾ ਮਾਹਿਰਾਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕੀਤਾ ਗਿਆ।
With doctors of BC and BC family doctors, we've developed a new patient model and have a new tentative physician master agreement. It will give family doctors a more equitable payment option, one that better recognizes their value in providing primary care, full service care to patients. Importantly, it will help maintain their business autonomy, giving them more flexibility to create the kind of practice that works for them and, most importantly, for their patients. With respect to the tentative physician master agreement, I'm happy to announce that the province and the doctors of BC have reached a tentative physician master agreement.
It addresses rising business costs. It recognizes the value physicians provide when delivering longitudinal care, and it will compensate us for the time spent on evening and weekend administrative burdens. Our hope is that this new payment model will not only stabilize longitudinal family practice, but help make it both sustainable and rewarding. Everyone deserves a family doctor, and this new option is a significant step to help make that goal a reality.
What this change is about is a fundamental change, and it's foundational to all the other things we're going to do. One, rostering systems treat people as individuals. So it's not your response to a survey that might come to somebody from the federal government and allows us to estimate. It allows you to engage with the system. It treats people as individuals. And so it then sets benchmarks for practices and allows people to access primary care in the same way as one accesses other healthcare services.
Having information about who gets to see a family doctor and who doesn't get to see a family doctor is going to be very important. Right now, we only see somebody in the system if they actually have access to the system. So it's hard for us to see people who don't have access. It's going to allow family doctors who are already providing longitudinal community-based care, so your family doctor in the community that you go and see, the ones that are already out there, it's going to allow them to be paid for the work that they are actually doing versus a version of the work that was designed in the 1980s. But there's nothing in here that says that it's going to mean that more people are going to get family doctors.
This agreement, does this mean X number of new patients will be attached to a family doctor? You can't say that and guarantee that for sure, because we will have to see how it happens in practice, but we know for a fact that we'll make things much better both for patients and for doctors, and it's going to have a positive effect.
And ਇਹੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਅਸੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਪੇਸ਼ੈਂਟ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੇਅਰ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਐਟਲੀਸਟ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਪਰ ਕੇਅਰ ਹੋਵੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪੇਸ਼ੈਂਟ ਹੈਗੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੋਲ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੋਣਾ ਕਿ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਹੋਰ ਆਉਣਗੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਨੂੰ ਪੂਰਾ ਪਤਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਜਿੰਨਾ ਵੀ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨਾ ਹਰ ਚੀਜ਼ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਪੇਮੈਂਟ ਮਿਲ ਜਾਣੀ ਆ ਇਹ ਨਹੀਂਗਾ ਕਿ 50% ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮੁਫਤ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਰਨਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ।
ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਨੇ ਦੇਸ਼ ਵਿੱਚ ਦਾਖਲ ਹੋਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਪ੍ਰਵਾਸੀਆਂ ਦੀ ਸੰਖਿਆ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੱਡੇ ਵਾਧੇ ਲਈ ਯੋਜਨਾਵਾਂ ਦਾ ਐਲਾਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ, ਜਿਸ ਵਿੱਚ 2025 ਤੱਕ ਹਰ ਸਾਲ 5 ਲੱਖ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਥੇ ਲਿਆਉਣ ਦਾ ਟੀਚਾ ਮਿਥਿਆ ਗਿਆ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਮਜ਼ਦੂਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਗੰਭੀਰ ਘਾਟ ਨੂੰ ਪੂਰਾ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਸਿਨ ਫਰੇਜ਼ਰ ਨੇ ਨਵੀਂ ਯੋਜਨਾ ਦਾ ਖੁਲਾਸਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਯੋਜਨਾ ਪਰਿਵਾਰਕ ਮੈਂਬਰਾਂ ਅਤੇ ਸ਼ਰਨਾਰਥੀਆਂ ਲਈ ਵਧੇਰੇ ਮਾਮੂਲੀ ਟੀਚਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ-ਨਾਲ ਲੋੜੀਂਦੇ ਕੰਮ ਦੇ ਹੁਨਰ ਅਤੇ ਤਜਰਬੇ ਵਾਲੇ ਵਧੇਰੇ ਸਥਾਈ ਨਿਵਾਸੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਵੀਕਾਰ ਕਰਨ ਤੇ ਜ਼ੋਰ ਦਿੰਦਾ ਹੈ।
Before I begin, let me first acknowledge that we're gathered here on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And of course, these lands are now home to many First Nations, Inuit and Métis people. Look, folks, it's simple to me. Canada needs more people. Canadians understand the need to continue to grow our population if we're going to meet the needs of the labour force, if we're going to rebalance a worrying demographic trend, and if we're going to continue to reunite families and to do right by the world and make good on our commitments to support some of the world's most vulnerable. My view is that Canada is uniquely positioned in the world to use immigration to achieve these outcomes. You know, immigration in Canada is not just something that we do, it's who we are. It's who we've always been. With the exception of Indigenous peoples, every family in Canada has the opening chapter of their history include the story of a migrant. My family happened to show up about 250 years ago, and I live only 15 minutes away today from where those first vessels landed from Scotland on the shores of Nova Scotia. Sean, you shared that you're the son of an immigrant tradesperson. This is the story of Canada, folks, and it's going to continue to be the story of Canada. You know, some of our families have come a long time ago in search of economic opportunity. Others have come to be reunited with their loved ones. Others still may not have left their country of origin by choice, but needed to flee to escape violence, war, and persecution. And Canada has a long and proud tradition of maintaining open doors to people who seek to come here for whatever reason it may be. But immigration is not just about addressing labour shortages. It's also about correcting one of the demographic trends that worries me every day. And that's the fact that Canada has an aging population. If you rewind the clock 50 years, you'd see that Canada had 7 workers for every retired person. Today, that number is closer to 3. By 2035, on our current trajectory, it looks like that number is going to be 2. In my part of the country, Atlantic Canada, we're already pretty much there. 2 workers for every retired person. If we don't do something to correct this demographic trend, the conversation we're going to have 10 or 15 years from now won't be about labour shortages. It's going to be about whether we have the economic capacity to continue to fund schools and hospitals and public services that I think we too often take for granted. You know, if we don't address this challenge with more ambitious growth, we know what the outcome is going to be. But the good news is that the recent data that came out just last week from Statistics Canada demonstrates that we are on a better path. The last full year before our government assumed office was 2014. In that year, Canada welcomed 240,000 newcomers. This year, we are on pace to welcome 431,000 new permanent residents as part of our immigration plan. Right now, Canada is growing at a population that is nearly twice as fast as any other G7 economy. There's no question in my mind that we are winning the global race for talent, but I think we can win it by a wider margin if we continue to pursue smart immigration policies, welcome more newcomers, and ensure that we set them up for success after they arrive.
ਹਾਈਵੇ 401 ਤੇ 7 ਵਾਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਟੱਕਰ ਕਾਰਨ 64 ਸਾਲਾ ਵਿਅਕਤੀ ਦੀ ਮੌਤ ਹੋ ਗਈ। ਓਨਟਾਰੀਓ ਪ੍ਰੋਵਿੰਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਾਬਿਕ ਇਹ ਘਟਨਾ ਓਸ਼ਾਵਾ ਦੇ ਹੋਲਟ ਰੋਡ ਨੇੜੇ ਸਵੇਰੇ 6:25 ਦੇ ਕਰੀਬ ਵਾਪਰੀ। ਪੁਲਿਸ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ 6 ਹੋਰ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਗੈਰ ਜਾਨ ਖਤਰੇ ਵਾਲੀਆਂ ਸੱਟਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਹਸਪਤਾਲ ਲਿਜਾਇਆ ਗਿਆ। ਪੁਲਿਸ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਪਿਕਿੰਗ ਤੋਂ ਟਰਾਂਸਪੋਰਟ ਟਰੱਕ ਦੇ ਡਰਾਈਵਰ ਨੂੰ ਮੌਕੇ ਤੇ ਹੀ ਮ੍ਰਿਤਕ ਐਲਾਨ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ। ਪੁਲਿਸ ਘਟਨਾ ਦੀ ਜਾਂਚ ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ, ਜਦਕਿ ਇਲਾਕੇ ਦੀਆਂ ਸੜਕਾਂ ਬੰਦ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤੀਆਂ ਗਈਆਂ। ਪੁਲਿਸ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਹਾਦਸੇ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਉਹ ਜਲਦ ਪਤਾ ਲਗਾਏਗੀ।
Well, it sounds like it happened just around 6:20 this morning. There was construction, Highway 401 westbound, just beyond Highway 418, and traffic was slowing down in that area. It was still dark at the time. The artificial lighting was on. Visibility was good. And with queued traffic, the last vehicle that came in was a transport truck. That transport truck started to, I guess, kind of pinball across and push other vehicles out of the way before colliding into the back of another stopped transport truck. I can just show you the scene here right now where I am. And it is a significant scene here. We're just loading the vehicles right now. You can see that one pickup truck on the flatbed to the left. The tractor trailer in front of me with significant front end damage. That's the last truck that came in. The driver, that's the 64-year-old man from Pickering who was pronounced deceased in that vehicle. It is fully loaded with tires. We are having some challenges right now with the recovery of this because you can see the trailer has been ruptured and the wall has been compromised. That eliminates all the structural integrity of the trailer. And as they started removing the truck from the trailer, all the rivets started popping along that trailer. So that is going to cause some challenges. I was hoping for a 1 o'clock reopening. We may now, unfortunately, be closer to 1:30, hopefully before 2 o'clock, before everything gets reopened. So that's the challenges we're dealing with right now. One man is dead, 6 other people in hospital with just relatively minor injuries, but the highway has been shut down all morning. We're looking into a lot of factors right now. It doesn't look like there's anything environmental. We've had our mechanics already looking at the truck. We don't see anything obvious mechanically. So we are obviously looking into driver action, whether or not that was a medical issue or whether or not it was an inattentive and awareness of the slowing traffic ahead. There were signs in the area. Obviously, brake lights well in advance. All the other traffic was slowing or stopping appropriately. It had been slow for some time, and unfortunately, tragedy struck here when this truck, plowed into the stop traffic, and it's the driver of that truck who has been pronounced deceased here at the scene as it was approaching, and that certainly saved many lives as a result of the dynamics of this crash.
ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਦੇ ਰਾਸ਼ਟਰਪਤੀ ਜੋ ਬਾਈਡਨ ਨੇ ਰਿਪਬਲਿਕਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਾਜਿਕ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਟੌਤੀ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਆਖਿਆ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉਸਨੇ ਮੱਧਕਾਲੀ ਚੋਣਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਚੋਣ ਪ੍ਰਚਾਰ ਦੇ ਆਖਰੀ ਹਫ਼ਤੇ ਦੀ ਸ਼ੁਰੂਆਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਅਗਲੇ ਹਫ਼ਤੇ ਹੋਣ ਵਾਲੀਆਂ ਚੋਣਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਡੈਮੋਕ੍ਰੇਟਸ ਇੱਕ ਸੰਭਾਵੀ ਰਿਪਬਲਿਕਨ ਲਹਿਰ ਲਈ ਤਿਆਰ ਨੇ। ਬਾਈਡਨ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਸੀਨੀਅਰ ਸੈਂਟਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਦਾਅਵਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਸਮਾਜਿਕ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਟੌਤੀ ਕਰਨ ਅਤੇ ਟੈਕਸ ਘਟਾਉਣਗੇ।
He had coverage, but the costs are astronomical. You all know somebody who's had a serious disease. Some of these drugs can be $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 a year, some of them. And so what Sheldon went through is something that a lot of you, maybe some in the audience, have gone through as well. And let me start off by saying I love Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and I make no apologies. She is not only one of my best friends in the United States Congress. I know I don't look it, but I served 36 years in the Congress. And I spent time working with Debbie. She wasn't there nearly that long when I was there, but my point is we became good friends because she has enormous integrity. She has a sense of understanding what people are going through, and she plays it out. She works it out. And so she was one of my biggest supporters in helping me not only pass, but draft and move some of the legislation we're going to talk about today, a couple pieces of it. And I don't have a greater friend in the United States Senate, and I don't have a greater friend when I was vice president, nor as president. So, Debbie, thank you, kiddo. I don't know even where you're sitting, but oh, there you are, Debbie. Thank you. Folks, last time I was in Florida was almost a month ago because of Hurricane Ian, and we surveyed the damage in the ground at Fort Myers, and it was the surrounding communities by air, helicopter. The damage and destruction was historic, almost unimaginable. And I've said then that it's going to take not weeks or months, but years to fully recover and rebuild. But I also made a commitment. I made a commitment to my administration, the federal government, would give the people of Florida the commitment that we're going to not move until it's all done. We're going to stick with you till it gets all done. And look, folks, my administration has been through, going to follow through on those commitments to get the people of Florida what they need as fast as they can get it and to help to rebuild. So far, we put in through the legislation Debbie helped me pass as well, $1.7 billion in federal grants, disaster loans and flood insurance payments have been provided to state and small businesses and households. FEMA has made assistance available to 26 counties and will to provide temporary housing and for the survivors of those 6 counties. We've sent 24 disaster recovery centers across the state for survivors to register for help. And FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Assistance, is going door to door to reach people as well. They've also performed over 180,000 home inspections, 180,000 personal inspections.
ਸਸਕੁਐਚਨ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ ਸਸਕੁਐਚਨ ਫਰਸਟ ਐਕਟ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ, ਜਿਸ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਸੂਬੇ ਅਤੇ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਕੁਦਰਤੀ ਸਰੋਤਾਂ ਦੇ ਅਧਿਕਾਰ ਖੇਤਰ ਦੀ ਪੁਸ਼ਟੀ ਕਰੇਗਾ। ਸਸਕੁਐਚਨ ਦੇ ਨਿਆਂ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਬ੍ਰਾਉਨਵੇਨ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਐਕਟ ਆਰਥਿਕ ਨੁਕਸਾਨ ਨੂੰ ਮਾਪਣ, ਮੁਲਾਂਕਣ ਅਤੇ ਪ੍ਰਭਾਸ਼ਿਤ ਕਰਨ ਬਾਰੇ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਫੈਡਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਥਾਨ ਅਤੇ ਆਰਥਿਕ ਵਿਕਾਸ ਨੂੰ ਵਧਾਉਣ ਲਈ ਸਸਕੁਐਚਨ ਦੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਪ੍ਰਤੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਮੇਵਾਰੀ ਬਾਰੇ ਹੈ। ਐਕਟ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਸੰਵਿਧਾਨ ਦੇ ਅਧੀਨ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿਸ਼ੇਸ਼ ਵਿਧਾਨਿਕ ਅਧਿਕਾਰ ਖੇਤਰ ਦਾ ਦਾਅਵਾ ਕਰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਨਾਮਵਰ ਸਿੱਖ ਸਕਾਲਰ ਸਰਦਾਰ ਗਿਆਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਸੰਧੂ ਦੀਆਂ 2 ਸ਼ਾਹਮੁਖੀ ਕਿਤਾਬਾਂ ਦੀ ਕੁੰਡ ਚੁਕਾਈ ਕਸ਼ਮੀਰ ਜਨਤੇ ਬੇਨਜ਼ੀਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਭਾਵਪੂਰਤ ਮਾਹੌਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ। ਗਿਆਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਕਿਤਾਬ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਵੈ ਜੀਵਨੀ, ਇਤਿਹਾਸ, ਸਫਰਨਾਮਾ, ਸੰਘਰਸ਼ਮਈ ਗਾਥਾ ਆਦਿ ਨੂੰ ਪਾਠਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੈਨਵਸ ਤੇ ਉਤਾਰਨ ਦਾ ਯਤਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ। ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਇਹ ਕਿਤਾਬ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਸ਼ਿਤ ਹੋਈ ਸੀ, ਫਿਰ ਗੁਰਮੁਖੀ ਅਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਸ਼ਾਹਮੁਖੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਸ਼ਿਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਹੈ। ਗੁਰੂ ਨਾਨਕ ਦੇਵ ਇੰਜੀਨੀਅਰਿੰਗ ਕਾਲਜ ਬਿੱਦਰ ਦੇ ਚੇਅਰਮੈਨ ਅਤੇ ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧਕ ਕਮੇਟੀ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਾ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਨਾਨਕ ਚੀਰਾ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਬਿੱਦਰ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਧਾਨ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਬਲਬੀਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਾਜ ਸੇਵਾ ਲਈ ਕਰਨਾਟਕ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਕੰਨੜ ਰਾਜੋਤਸਵ ਐਵਾਰਡ ਨਾਲ ਸਨਮਾਨਿਤ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ। ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਸਮੇਂ-ਸਮੇਂ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਬਲਬੀਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਕਰਨਾਟਕ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਸਨਮਾਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ। ਡਾਕਟਰ ਬਲਬੀਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਸਮਾਜ ਸੇਵੀ ਧਾਰਮਿਕ ਕੰਮਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਪਾਉਂਦੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਸੋ ਵਰਲਡ ਨਿਊਜ਼ ਖਬਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਇਸ ਬੁਲੇਟਿਨ 'ਚ ਇੰਨਾ ਹੀ। ਦੇਸ਼ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੀ ਬਾਕੀ ਖਬਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਲਈ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਣੇ ਰਹੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਚੰਡੀਗੜ੍ਹ ਟਾਈਮ ਟੀਵੀ ਤੇ। ਧੰਨਵਾਦ।